Who doesn't love a good mystery? And what's more mysterious than an entire colony of people just vanishing into thin air? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the lost colony of Roanoke, America's oldest unsolved mystery. When the first Europeans settled in North America in the early 1600s, they had grand dreams of creating thriving colonies that would become the New England. Unfortunately, things didn't always go according to plan. In fact, one of those colonies mysteriously disappeared. This is the story of the lost colony of Roanoke. In 1584, an English explorer named Sir Walter Raleigh was granted a charter by Queen Elizabeth I to establish settlements in North America. He named his new colony Virginia in honor of the Virgin Queen. In 1585, Raleigh sent out the first group of English settlers to the New World. They landed near present-day Nags Head, North Carolina, and established the first English settlement in North America. But it was a disaster from the start. The settlers were not prepared for the harsh conditions in the New World, and they quickly became desperate for food and water. They were also attacked by local Native Americans who they believed were allies but soon realized were not. After only 8 months, the colony was in ruins and most of the settlers had died. A few managed to escape to Bermuda alive, but the rest were dead, leaving the first English colony a total loss. But Raleigh was determined to succeed where his first group of settlers had failed. So he assembled another group of settlers and set sail for North America. This time, the colony was much better prepared with supplies and a better location. The second attempt at Roanoke was much more successful. The settlers built sturdy homes and farms and established good relations with the Native Americans in the area. Unfortunately, this success was short-lived. In 1590, when the English fleet arrived to resupply the colony, they found it completely abandoned. All of the buildings were empty, and there was no sign of the settlers anywhere. The only clue as to what had happened was the word Croatoan carved into a post. To this day, nobody knows what happened to the settlers or why they left their homes behind. There are many theories about what happened to the colonists of Roanoke. One of the most popular is that the colonists were killed and eaten by the local Native Americans. There is evidence to support this theory, as there were several attacks by Native Americans in the area at the time. However, there is no archaeological evidence that the colonists were killed or that their bodies were ever eaten. This theory seems unlikely. Another popular theory is that the colonists all ran away and joined the Native Americans. This theory is based on the fact that the colonists left behind all of their possessions, and there was no sign of a struggle. It is possible that the colonists decided to leave their old lives behind and start fresh with the Native Americans. However, there is no evidence that any of the colonists survived, or that they lived with the Native Americans for any length of time. A third theory is that the colonists all died of disease or starvation. This theory is supported by the fact that the colonists were already struggling to grow food when the English fleet arrived to resupply them. It is possible that the colonists were unable to grow enough food to sustain themselves and eventually died of starvation. However, again, there is no archaeological evidence to support this theory. So then, what happened to the colonists of Roanoke? Well, recent DNA testing may have shed some light on the mystery. In 2012, researchers from the University of Southern Mississippi and the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources announced that they had recovered the remains of 2 children from the site of the lost colony. The team used DNA testing to identify the remains as belonging to 2 brothers. Thomas and Francis died in the early 1700s. But the most interesting part of the discovery was that the DNA testing revealed that the 2 brothers were of African descent. This is significant because it suggests that the colonists did not simply disappear, but were instead killed and buried in a mass grave along with other Africans who had been enslaved by the colonists. This would explain why there is no archaeological evidence of the colonists' deaths, as their bodies were likely hidden in a mass grave. It would also explain why the word Croatoan was carved into a post, as it may have been a coded message to alert future explorers to the fate of the colonists. However, this theory is still debated by some experts. Critics argue that there is no evidence that the colonists kept slaves or that they were killed in a mass grave. They also point out that the word Croatoan could have had a different meaning. Regardless, this discovery has shed new light on the mystery of Roanoke and suggests that the colonists did not simply vanish into thin air. In addition to DNA testing, archaeologists have also uncovered new clues about the fate of the lost colony. In 2004, archaeologists discovered the foundations of several buildings, including a church and a fort. The discovery of these buildings suggests that the colonists were living in a more permanent way than previously thought. If they had planned to stay in the area long term, it is unlikely that they would have abandoned their homes without good reason. Overall, the evidence suggests that the colonists were probably killed, possibly by the Native Americans in the area. It is possible that the colonists were able to flee and hide from their attackers, but eventually they were found and killed. But their bodies were likely hidden in a mass grave along with other Africans who had been enslaved by the colonists. The word Croatoan may have been a coded message to alert future explorers to the fate of the colonists. The mystery of Roanoke is one of America's oldest and most enduring mysteries. For centuries, people have speculated about what happened to the lost colony. Now, thanks to DNA testing and archaeological research, we may finally be getting closer to the truth. While we may never know exactly what happened to the colonists, we can be sure that their story will continue to fascinate people for years to come. If you enjoyed learning about the lost colony of Roanoke, be sure to check out my other videos about the early days of colonization in North America. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something new. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. And remember, if you want to support my work, you can do so through the links below. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.